Hello world, Patricia, O'Connor, and Frida Reba Darcy here today on the Bonsai balcony. It is, as predicted, another very, very warm day. It says it's in the high 90s on the ground. It says it's over 100. Up here, we've already gone through and watered early. And now we're just waiting with another like 5 hours or so of daylight to see whether or not we're going to water often as well, early and often. Let's see if they both come into play. There is usually a very large oak tree sitting here. It's back behind me currently. And yeah, it's back behind me currently. I'm zoomed in, or I'm looking now at something that's a little easier to see. This is the tray that I was talking about yesterday that helps hedge our tiny little, and that gives an escape route or gives the pot something to sit on that's not as reflective and keeps the temps on the pots down, while it also gives an escape route, if they have one, something to escape into. Oh, it is so hot today. We are all just kind of, and I have a bronchial thing. I saw somebody I listened to on YouTube videos in Washington, they have a bronchial infection. Somebody else I listened to from my little breakfast morning routine, they have it. But as far as California is concerned, I only heard of one other person, and they were in Oakland, that caught a little. But now, guess what? So I've been kind of taking it a little easy the last couple of days, but compared to the other stuff, this is kind of like a cold. We just take our aspirin and deal with it. I did take off work Friday because that would allow me to have a long weekend to recover from this, so I can come back Monday instead of working and getting worse, right? So that's kind of what's going on with me. It's not really all that. We've been able to maintain the heat is one thing I'm glad to be around over the heat. The sky looks a little yellow. My pondo looks a little yellow. My smaller pondos look fine. My dawn redwood, let's have a little. I was saying earlier, I've been watching Steve's Backyard Bonsai, and I've been watching Dave's Bonsai. And those guys have all been working with their dawn redwoods, and they are so pretty. The forests they have, those guys have really got it going on. I'm happy with the amount of overgrowth that we've gotten out of this guy this year. I can't really exactly, with all of that going on, see what our design cue will be necessarily, but I'm okay. I'm okay letting it just photosynthesize as long as it wants to. Today's are the kind of days that can wreck the health of a tree like this, though. It's really over 100 degrees up here. The pines don't seem to mind, but if this guy dried out, it would be a wilted mess already. So after this, I'm going to have to sit back and just take it as it comes. We know that it's October. We know it's the first week of October. We know that most trees are going to start trying to work themselves towards a state of winter hardiness, when lo and behold, they're hit with just the opposite. They need to be more summer tolerant right now to deal with the temperatures at hand. But I've taken my ponderosa out of the direct light. It gets lit artificially right now more than anything else. And I also know that that's going to keep the hours down on it because the lights overhead. It'll only get ambient for the rest of the day, which is fine by me. I don't want to burn anything up, and it needs. 2 years ago, that tree would have been in quite a bit of snow. The ball cypresses don't care if it gets super hot. They're from the land of super hot. But on the other hand, if you let them dry out, they're one of the first. They're one of the first to have problems. They will wilt like anything. I mean, they will just become a wilty mess, and by the time it becomes total from one end of the tree to the other, some of it won't come back. Also, something to consider when you see that happening, to your foliage, the tips, the root tips are doing the same thing below. That usually that wilting of foliage indicates that the roots below have just started sucking air instead of the moisture that they needed. And when that straw starts running dry, they lose hydraulics and everything falls. And when everything falls, then it starts wilting. Now, this, I'm gonna have a hard time getting this guy lit. This is our cork bark. This is our cork bark oak. Let me see if I can get over here on the lit side. And this is the side that's been facing the out. And it has a lot of good new shoots on it. And I'm just gonna go back here and clean up what I think needs to be cleaned up. I don't want to get that leaf. Oh, come on. Okay, can you do that a little neater? Get those other scissors. I got the wrong scissors again. We'll just go with the stainless. Okay. Now, cut that a little cleaner would be nice. Good, 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 good. And then let's see, what does this come back to? That can be a keeper. I'll cut that back to where it elongates, just where it starts to elongate. So we got that guy. There's not a whole lot of these. Wish there were. There is a lot of new growth though. There's a lot of little tiny spikes on here that are looking to make foliage. See, now I'm not looking to keep any of this, but this is a good example. By letting this go for the summer, all of these nodes have extended super far out. So that's no big deal on this one. I plan to cut it back all the way anyway. Now this guy, that's ramification. We'll go with that. I'll cut it back to, I pick the last leaf on the branch. Whatever direction that leaf is facing will be the direction of the new sprout that comes out on there. The tree's looking pretty good. I'm not having a lot of powdery mildew yet. I'm not seeing a lot of that. Knock on wood. I can see where this heat has dried out some of this, some of these tiny shoots got a little dry before I got in there with the water. That may have wrecked a few of them. If that's the case, it will replace them. All right. And you can see a few more little yellow shoots here and about. That's not burnt stuff. That's the color of it when it first comes out. It starts out coming out pink and then kind of goes to that color before turning green. This is kind of like a lot of the same things that we were talking about with our bald cypress and our dawn redwoods. We wait for the little branches to come out when they're green. They might not necessarily survive the winter. When they start to turn maroon, that means they're starting to kind of lignify and become hardier branches that will be something more than just seasonal. And then before finally going this kind of gray color, it means they're hardwood. These guys do not take to wiring as easy as pines do. If you crack them, they'll die. The limb that you crack will more often than not, I've had them die on me. I don't think necessarily that going back over that with cut paste helps that. For all their badass stature, their solidness, the foliage, if you wire it, you're going to have to move it to keep it from leaving scars in there. If it leaves scars in there, they tend to stay a long time. And if you crack the branch, you'll probably lose it. So that's been my experience on wiring this cork bark oak. Now, having said that, if I wanted to wire it, I would. I just wouldn't leave it in any one space long enough to dig in. But I wouldn't necessarily remove it either. You see it and see where it's starting to dig in. You take most of it up and then rewrap it in different tracks. Just basically that way. But you would have to be diligent to get the shape you want out of it, and you would have to be diligent to have it not cause wire scars. Those are 3 years ago. So yeah, those aren't going away. And that's just kind of a little bit more on our cork bark oak. This is not always the easiest tree to ramify. Sometimes we have a couple of years where things go well, and then we've suffered a backup. I have heard other people say that as well, so I don't think we're the only person who's ever been through that. I'm leaving this. I'm leaving that. I'm leaving that. And I'm leaving that. We're working more foliage up this tree. I don't know how long that's going to stay. It might can stay. I think that's too low. What I'm talking about is this. I think that's too low, but I kind of like it. I don't know. I'm reluctant to cut that. So I'll cut it later if I cut it. This can be new ramification. Everything else is coming out pretty full. And I'm just kind of giving tips as I remember them on this thing. If you do not prune your cork bark oak, the branches on it will grow out really, really surprisingly long, and then back close to the base, you'll begin to drop leaves, and those internodes will get longer and longer and longer, and you'll have a hard time getting the tree back to here. That's so far what I've been doing is letting stuff grow out and then chopping it really short, letting it bifurcate off into twos and then chopping them off really short. It'll take forever to get a foot of canopy that way, but that's what we're looking to do here, and I've been finding it rewarding once I finally figured out on my end what it was I was supposed to do. What was it I was supposed to do? A couple of things. One, at first, I wasn't watering the tree enough because whenever I found the tree, it was dry, and it was also during COVID, so it was dry because it wasn't getting watered enough. I thought it was dry because it was supposed to be dry. So I underwatered it for a little longer than that. Also, it had very little in the way of branches, having already suffered some dieback from the lack of watering, but I hadn't figured that part out yet either. So the branching that it had, I wasn't totally happy with, but I thought, I have like 4 branches on this tree, and I don't want to cut it down to 2 because what if it doesn't go well? So what I was doing was trying to prolong a bad design because I didn't know better, not watering the way I should have, and not knowing enough about feeding to get busy with the feeding that I should have been doing. Once I started watering this tree, once I started cutting back the growth that I didn't want and trusting the system, the tree began to back bud. And it back buds like nobody business. We can get 2, 3, 4 rounds of branches out of this tree in a given summer. And the problem with that is, I think, could be that that foliage, like you can see there, it gets so dense that if you're not careful, that all that can get powdery mildew as it becomes, something that collects humidity. I need to be able to increase air circulation on this guy, probably, now that I'm thinking about it, to make sure that doesn't happen. But right now, all bets are off. The tree is doing fine. We've got what looks like a little bit of pads here starting to happen here. And what I would like is for this to blend more into here, to blend more into there, and just start building a more basic, uniform oak tree design out of my cork bark oak. It has a fantastic base. It has very high tolerance to drought, although, like I said, if you want the tree to develop easily and meet you halfway, you water it, you feed it, and you cut back the new growth constantly, and it will reward you by bifurcating off and producing more growth. Some summers, it almost acts like a tropical with the amount of stuff that it gets busy and does during the heat of the season. So that is a little bit. There wasn't a whole lot of trim work to do here, but it's just enough to keep us going, keep this little tree going. I've got some shoots here that I'm also not even messing with. They can just do their thing. This is also a quick look at our blue blazes being hot balcony. I think my condo looks pretty good. It's still taking up water it got thirsty during this heat wave, and that tells me that it's still, active enough, which is good. Good. You drank all that water I gave you yesterday, and now you want some more. Well, here you go. So that's always encouraging. I'll slam this heavy thing back in here where it goes, but this time it'll be pointed at us instead of pointed away from us. We'll be looking at the front of that tree for a little while. It won't be too long before the foliage drops on this dawn redwood, and when that happens, we'll go in there and try to figure out what it